At least she'll be dead before our first anniversary. 8 words. That's all it took. 8 words on a phone screen that wasn't mine, in a conversation I was never meant to see. She was talking about me, the woman who was supposed to become my daughter-in-law in 3 days, the woman I'd welcomed with open arms, defended against doubters, and genuinely loved. She was counting down the years until my death, like it was a prison sentence almost over. And the worst part? When I saw those words, my first instinct wasn't rage, it was doubt. Should I tell my son? Should I ruin his wedding? Should I keep quiet and let him marry a woman who literally wished me dead? I stood in that moment, phone in my shaking hands, and almost chose silence. I almost let my only child marry a monster because I was afraid of being called a jealous mother-in-law. Almost. But I didn't. My name is Eleanor. I'm 72 years old, and I've lived in Vermont my entire life. I raised my son Daniel as a single mother after my husband died when Daniel was just 8. It was hard, but we made it work. We were a team, and watching him grow into a successful, kind man became my greatest pride. So when he called me 2 years ago, his voice full of excitement, telling me he'd met someone special, my heart soared. I was ready to love whoever made my son happy. Her name was Vanessa. 28 years old, beautiful, polished, ambitious. She worked in marketing for a tech company in Boston. Daniel, who was 35 and a civil engineer, had met her at a professional conference. He was absolutely smitten. I'll never forget the first time he brought her to Vermont to meet me. It was a crisp October weekend. I'd prepared Daniel's favorite pot roast and apple pie. I'd cleaned the house until it sparkled. I'd even put fresh flowers from my garden in the guest room. I wanted everything to be perfect. When they arrived, Vanessa stepped out of the car wearing designer clothes and heels, completely inappropriate for my gravel driveway. But she smiled, and it was dazzling. "Mrs. Patterson, it's so wonderful to finally meet you," she said, embracing me in a cloud of expensive perfume. "Daniel talks about you constantly. I feel like I already know you." I liked her immediately. Or rather, I wanted to like her, and so I did. That's how it works sometimes, isn't it? We decide to see the good because we want it to be there so badly. That weekend, Vanessa said all the right things. She complimented my pot roast, asking for the recipe. She admired my garden and asked questions about growing tomatoes in Vermont's climate. She looked through old photo albums with genuine seeming interest, laughing at pictures of Daniel as a gap-toothed 7-year-old. She asked about my late husband, and when I got emotional talking about him, she squeezed my hand. "You raised an incredible man," she told me Sunday morning over coffee. "He's everything I've ever wanted. Kind, stable, thoughtful. You should be so proud." I was proud, and I was grateful. Grateful that Daniel had found someone who saw his worth, who appreciated him. When they left that Sunday afternoon, Daniel pulled me aside. "She likes you, Mom. She really does." "I like her too, sweetheart." And I meant it. I called my sister Margaret in California that night and gushed about Daniel's girlfriend. "She's perfect for him, Marg. Smart, beautiful, and she was so sweet to me. I think she might be the one." Over the next several months, I saw Vanessa regularly. Daniel had moved to Boston to be closer to her, which stung more than I wanted to admit, but I understood. They visited Vermont once a month, and I made the drive to Boston every 6 weeks or so. Vanessa was always pleasant, always polite. She remembered little details about conversations we'd had. She'd text me pictures of things that reminded her of me. She'd send me articles about gardening. But there were small moments that gave me pause. Tiny fractures in the perfect picture. Like the time I mentioned feeling tired after our walk through Boston Common, and I caught a flicker of something in her expression before she rearranged her face into concern. Or when Daniel talked about his childhood camping trips with me, and she looked almost bored, irritated even. But I pushed these observations away. I was being oversensitive. I was being one of those mothers who couldn't let go. Daniel was happy. That's what mattered. Last April, Daniel proposed. They came to Vermont to tell me in person. I cried tears of joy and hugged them both. Vanessa showed me her ring, a stunning 2-carat diamond that must have cost Daniel months of salary. She seemed thrilled, and why wouldn't she be? My son was a catch. I want you to be heavily involved in the wedding planning, Vanessa told me that day. You're going to be my mother now, too. Those words melted my heart. I'd lost my own mother 5 years earlier, and the thought of having a daughter, even a daughter-in-law, filled a void I'd been trying to ignore. And true to her word, Vanessa included me. We went dress shopping together in Boston. She asked my opinion on flowers, on venues, on catering menus. I felt valued. I felt loved. I felt like I was gaining the daughter I'd never had. The wedding was scheduled for September 14th, a Saturday evening ceremony at a beautiful inn in the Berkshires, followed by a reception for 150 guests. Vanessa wanted elegance without being stuffy, she said. I helped where I could, though I'll admit most of the details were beyond my budget to contribute to financially. Vanessa's parents, who were wealthy real estate developers from Connecticut, were paying for most of it. I met them a few times, Gerald and Patricia Monroe. They were pleasant enough, though I always felt like they were sizing me up and finding me wanting. Patricia had this way of looking at my clothes, my car, my hands, that made me feel small. But they were civil, and they seemed to approve of Daniel, so I didn't let it bother me too much. About 2 months before the wedding, I noticed changes in how Vanessa treated me. Small things at first. She'd take longer to return my calls. When we did talk, she seemed distracted. When I offered suggestions for the wedding, she'd smile tightly and say, "Thanks, Eleanor, but we've got it handled." I told myself she was just stressed. Wedding planning is overwhelming, and Vanessa had a demanding job on top of it. I didn't take it personally. Then came the bridesmaid dress incident. Vanessa had asked me to be part of the wedding party. Not a bridesmaid exactly, but she'd ordered a special dress for me to wear, coordinating with her color scheme of dusty rose and champagne. When the dress arrived at my house, I tried it on and called her immediately. "Vanessa, sweetheart, I think there's been a mistake with the sizing," I said gently. The dress was at least 2 sizes too small. I couldn't get it past my hips. There was a pause on the other end of the line. "What size did you tell me you were, Eleanor?" "I told you a size 14, dear. This looks like a size 10. Another pause. "Oh, I must have written it down wrong. I'll handle it." Her tone was clipped, cold even. I felt embarrassed, as if my body size was somehow an inconvenience to her. But I pushed the feeling away. Mistakes happen. The second dress arrived 3 weeks later. This one fit, but it was unflattering in ways that seemed almost intentional. The cut made me look frumpy. The color washed me out. When I put it on, I barely recognized myself. But I didn't complain. It was her wedding, and I would wear whatever she wanted. 6 weeks before the wedding, Daniel called me. It was late evening, and he sounded exhausted in a way that went beyond physical tiredness. "Mom, I need to talk to you about something." My heart jumped into my throat. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" "I'm fine, it's just..." He sighed heavily. "It's Vanessa. She's been saying we should move to Connecticut after the wedding. Close to her parents. She says the opportunities are better there, and she wants to be near her family." Connecticut. That was 5 hours away from me compared to the 3 hours to Boston. I'd already been feeling the distance when he moved to Boston. Connecticut might as well be another country. "What do you think about that?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. "I don't know. I love my job here. My life is in Boston. All my friends are here." But she seems really set on it. She's been looking at houses online, sending me listings. She's already started talking to recruiters there. He paused. She also mentioned that maybe we should limit our visits to Vermont. She says the drive is too much with her career demands, and she can't be taking that much time off. Something cold and heavy settled in my stomach, like I'd swallowed a stone. "Daniel, does Vanessa like Vermont?" "She says she does." "That's not what I asked." There was a long, uncomfortable silence. I could almost hear him wrestling with the truth. "She says it's too quiet, too rural. She gets bored there. His voice got quieter. Last time we visited, she spent half the weekend on her phone in the guest room. When I asked what was wrong, she said she just needed to catch up on work emails. But Mom, it was a Sunday. And does she like spending time with me? I asked, even though I wasn't sure I wanted to hear the answer. Mom, of course she does. Why would you ask that? I didn't have a good answer that wouldn't sound paranoid. Just promise me you'll make decisions based on what you want, not just what she wants. Marriage is about compromise, but it shouldn't be about losing yourself. I know, Mom. I will. He sighed again. I love you. I love you too, sweetheart. More than anything. After we hung up, I sat in my kitchen for a long time, staring at the magnet on my refrigerator. It was a photo of Daniel and me from his college graduation, both of us grinning, his arm around my shoulders, his graduation cap tilted at a funny angle. He'd looked at me that day with so much love and gratitude, thanking me for all the sacrifices I'd made to put him through school. I felt a creeping sense of dread that I couldn't name, a feeling that I was watching my son slip away, being pulled into a current I couldn't see but could feel, and I was supposed to just smile and wave from the shore. 4 weeks before the wedding, Vanessa had her bachelorette party in Miami. She'd invited me, but I'd declined. Sitting on a beach with a group of 20-somethings drinking cocktails didn't sound like my idea of a good time, and I think we both knew the invitation was just a formality. Still, I'd sent a gift basket to her hotel with champagne and bath products, wanting to show I supported her celebration even if I wasn't there. She never thanked me for it, but her best friend Chelsea, who'd always been kind to me, called me a few days after they returned. Her voice had that careful quality people use when they're about to deliver bad news. Eleanor, I wanted to touch base with you. Is everything okay? I asked, already feeling my stomach tighten. Yes, everything's fine. The trip was fun. She paused. I just wanted to tell you that Vanessa had maybe a little too much to drink one night, and she said some things. I sat down at my kitchen table, gripping the phone tighter. What kind of things? She was venting about wedding stress. She mentioned that having you involved had been more work than she expected, that you had outdated ideas and didn't understand her vision. Chelsea's voice dropped lower. She also said something about how she'd have to put up with your interference for years, but at least it wouldn't be forever. The phrase, wouldn't be forever, stuck in my mind like a thorn. What did that mean? I'm only telling you this because I don't think she meant it, Chelsea continued. She was drunk and stressed, but I thought you should know in case there's been any tension. I see. Thank you for telling me, Chelsea. After we hung up, I felt sick, but I rationalized it the way I'd rationalized everything else. She'd been drunk. People say things they don't mean when they're drunk and stressed. Maybe I had been overbearing with my suggestions. Maybe I needed to step back and give them more space. So that's exactly what I did. I stopped calling as often. I stopped offering opinions on wedding details. I waited for Vanessa to reach out to me. She rarely did, and when she did, her texts were brief and perfunctory. Everything's fine. Don't worry about anything. Looking back now, I can see how deliberately she was creating distance, testing to see if Daniel would notice, training him to accept my absence. The week before the wedding was a whirlwind. Out-of-town guests were arriving, final fittings, final confirmations, final everything. Daniel and Vanessa had decided to do things traditionally, staying in separate places the night before the wedding. Daniel would stay with me at my house in Vermont, and Vanessa would stay at the inn in the Berkshires with her bridesmaids. I drove down to Boston on Monday to help with last-minute preparations. Vanessa was staying at Daniel's apartment, using it as her base for the week. When I arrived, she greeted me at the door. "Eleanor, come in, come in." She seemed genuinely happy to see me, which relieved some of my anxiety. We spent the afternoon running errands together. She was pleasant, chatty even, telling me about the honeymoon they'd planned to St. Lucia. I started to feel foolish for all my worries. This was just pre-wedding jitters on everyone's part. That evening, Vanessa's phone rang while she was in the shower. It was sitting on the kitchen counter where we'd been having tea. I wasn't trying to snoop, I swear, but I glanced at it automatically when it lit up, the way you do. The name on the screen said Chelsea. The preview of the text message showed beneath it. Babe, I know you're stressed, but you need to chill. She's just his mom. You only have to deal with her for like another 10, 15 years max lol. I froze. My brain tried to make sense of what I was reading. Another 10 to 15 years? Why would that time frame matter? Why would Vanessa need to deal with me? And then it hit me. The average life expectancy for a woman in America is around 80. I was 72. 10 to 15 years was how long I had left, statistically speaking. They were counting down the years until I died. My hand shook as I picked up the phone. I shouldn't have. I knew I shouldn't have, but I couldn't stop myself. I swiped up, and because Vanessa's phone wasn't locked at that moment, it opened to her text conversation with Chelsea. I started scrolling. My heart pounded so hard I thought I might be having a heart attack. Chelsea, how's the final week going? Vanessa, exhausting. Eleanor has been up my ass all day. Chelsea, is she still coming to everything? Vanessa, unfortunately, but whatever. At least she'll be dead before our first anniversary. I read it 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. The words didn't change. My hands went numb. You know that feeling when something is so shocking your body just stops working, right? My fingers felt thick and clumsy, but I couldn't stop scrolling. I had to know how deep this went. At least she'll be dead before our first anniversary. Those 8 words kept burning in my mind while I went back further in their conversation, weeks and weeks of messages. Vanessa, I'm so sick of pretending to care about her boring stories. Chelsea, just a few more weeks. Vanessa, I know. Once we're married, I can drop the act. Daniel will choose me over her. He always does. Chelsea, what if she lives longer than you think? Vanessa, my grandmother died at 74. Eleanor's already 72 and she has high blood pressure. Nature will take care of it. There was more. So much more. Jokes about my clothes, my house, my provincial life in Vermont. Comments about how I was clingy and needy. Plans for how Vanessa would slowly push Daniel away from me after the wedding. How she'd make it seem like I was the problem, that I couldn't accept their marriage, that I was jealous of their happiness. It was all there. Every smile had been fake. Every compliment had been a lie. Every moment I'd thought we were bonding, she'd been counting down the days until my death. I heard the shower turn off. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone steady, but I knew what I had to do. I opened my own phone with trembling fingers and started taking photos. Screen after screen, I captured every word of poison, every casual cruelty, every calculation. Click, click, click. The evidence that would either save my son or cost me everything. By the time Vanessa came out of the bathroom in her towel, I had it all. She saw me standing there with her phone in my hand and her face drained of color. Eleanor, I set her phone down on the counter, very carefully, very deliberately. When I looked at her, I saw her clearly for the first time. Not the woman I'd wanted her to be, the woman she actually was. I set her phone down on the counter very carefully. When I spoke, my voice didn't sound like my own. I think I should go back to my hotel now. What did you see? Her voice was sharp now, defensive. Enough. Eleanor, please. Let me explain. Those messages, they're not what? Not real. Not what they seem. I looked at her, really looked at her, and wondered how I'd ever thought she was beautiful. You wished me dead, Vanessa, multiple times. You've been counting the years until I die. Her jaw tightened. For a moment, I saw something flicker across her face. Not remorse, not shame, annoyance, as if I was being inconvenient by discovering her cruelty. You're overreacting, she said flatly. Those were private conversations. You had no right to look at my phone. Private conversations where you discussed how you can't wait for me to die? I never said that. At least she'll be dead before our first anniversary. That's a direct quote. She had the audacity to roll her eyes. God, it was a joke, Eleanor. Chelsea and I joke around like that. You wouldn't understand. What wouldn't I understand? How to be cruel. How to deceive someone who loves you. You know what? Vanessa's voice turned cold. Maybe this is for the best. Maybe we should clear the air. Yes, I find you exhausting. Yes, I think you're overbearing. Yes, I've been counting down the time until I don't have to pretend to care about your quaint little life anymore. But I love Daniel, and I'm going to marry him, and there's nothing you can do about it. I felt like I'd been slapped. You think Daniel will marry you after he hears about this? She laughed, actually laughed. You think Daniel will believe you? His bitter, lonely mother who can't let him go? Eleanor, I've been preparing for this. I've been telling Daniel for months how you've seemed jealous, how you've been passive-aggressive. If you go to him with this, I'll tell him you faked those screenshots because you can't stand to see him happy, and he'll believe me. He always believes me. The confidence in her voice terrified me because part of me wondered if she was right. Would Daniel believe me? I was his mother, yes, but Vanessa was the woman he loved. People believe what they want to believe. Get out of my apartment, Vanessa said, and think very carefully about what you do next. Because if you try to ruin my wedding, I'll make sure Daniel never speaks to you again. I don't remember driving back to my hotel. 1 minute, I was standing in that apartment. The next, I was sitting on the edge of my hotel bed, staring at the wall. Then the tears came. Not gentle crying, but the kind of sobbing that makes you feel like you're breaking apart from the inside. I'd been so blind. Every red flag I'd painted green. Every cold moment I'd made excuses for. I'd wanted a daughter so desperately that I'd let myself be played. And Vanessa's words kept circling in my head. He always believes me. Was she right? Would Daniel choose her over the evidence? Over me? I'd watched him defend her for months. When I'd felt hurt, he'd told me I was being too sensitive. When I'd questioned her, he'd gotten upset with me. I looked at the screenshots on my phone. The evidence was damning. But evidence doesn't always matter when someone's in love, does it? People believe what they want to believe. I could show Daniel these messages and watch him crumble, or watch him choose her anyway and lose him forever. Either way, I might lose my son. But if I said nothing, he'd marry a woman who'd been counting down the days until I died, who'd spend their marriage slowly cutting me out of his life, turning him against me, waiting for nature to take care of the problem that was me. There was no good choice, just the least terrible one. The rehearsal dinner was scheduled for Friday night, the day before the wedding. Vanessa's parents were hosting it at an expensive restaurant in the Berkshires. All the wedding party would be there, plus close family, about 40 people total. I called Chelsea, Vanessa's friend. Chelsea, it's Eleanor. I need to talk to you about something important. There was a pause. If this is about those texts, Vanessa already told me you saw them. Eleanor, I'm sorry, but that was a private conversation. Chelsea, I need you to be honest with me. Do you really think Vanessa loves Daniel? Silence. Then quietly, I think Vanessa loves what Daniel represents, stability, a good man who will give her a comfortable life. But does she love him? Another pause. I don't know. If you're really her friend, you'll let this play out. Don't warn her that I'm going to show Daniel those messages. Eleanor, I can't. Chelsea, you called me after the Bachelorette party because some part of you felt guilty about how Vanessa talks about me. That same part of you knows what I'm doing is right. I heard her sigh. When are you going to tell him? The rehearsal dinner, Friday night. That's cruel. Not as cruel as wishing someone dead because they're inconvenient. Chelsea didn't respond to that, but she didn't say she'd warn Vanessa either. Friday arrived too quickly and not quickly enough. I dressed carefully that evening, choosing a navy dress that made me feel dignified. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. I looked older than I had a week ago. Tired, but there was something else in my eyes. Determination. The restaurant was beautiful. Warm lighting, elegant table settings, soft music playing. Vanessa had spared no expense. She and Daniel stood at the entrance greeting guests. Daniel looked happy, handsome in his suit. Vanessa was radiant in a white cocktail dress, playing the role of the blushing bride-to-be perfectly. When I walked in, Daniel hugged me tightly. "Mom, I'm so glad you're here." I held on to him for an extra moment, breathing in his familiar scent. "I love you, sweetheart." "I love you too, Mom." Vanessa air-kissed my cheek, her smile brilliant and empty. "Eleanor, you look lovely." I didn't return the compliment. I just nodded and moved past her to find my seat. The dinner progressed through its courses. Salad, soup, the main course. People gave toasts. Vanessa's father talked about how proud he was of his daughter. One of the groomsmen told a funny story about Daniel from college. Everyone laughed at the appropriate moments. It was picture perfect. I waited until dessert was served, until everyone was full and happy, their defenses down. Then I stood up, my wine glass in my hand. "I'd like to propose a toast," I said. Daniel smiled at me. "Mom, you don't have to. I insist." The room quieted down. All eyes turned to me. I saw Vanessa's face, her smile frozen, something wary in her eyes. "I want to talk about honesty," I began. My voice was steady, clearer than I'd expected. When we love someone, we owe them honesty, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. I looked directly at Daniel. "Son, I need to show you something. Right now in front of everyone because I need witnesses to this." "Mom, what are you talking about?" Daniel's smile was fading, confusion replacing it. I pulled out my phone and opened the photos. 3 days ago, I accidentally saw a text message on Vanessa's phone. What I found when I looked further changed everything. Vanessa stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly. "Eleanor, don't do this. Don't you dare. At least she'll be dead before our first anniversary." I read aloud. "That's what your fiancé said about me, Daniel. She was talking about how she only has to tolerate me for 10 to 15 more years before I die." The room went silent, completely, utterly silent. 40 people, and not one of them moved. I could hear someone's sharp intake of breath. I could hear the clink of a fork being set down on a plate. Daniel looked at Vanessa, and I saw hope dying in his eyes. Hope that this was a misunderstanding. Hope that I was wrong. "What is she talking about?" "She's lying," Vanessa said, but her voice came out too fast, too sharp. "She's been trying to sabotage our wedding because she can't let you go." "I have screenshots," I said calmly. I walked over to Daniel, my heels clicking on the hardwood floor. Every eye in that room followed me. "Read them yourself, sweetheart." Daniel took the phone. His hands were shaking. I wanted to look away from his face, to spare myself watching my son's heart break in real time. But I couldn't. I needed to see this through. His eyes moved across the screen. At first there was just confusion. Then his eyebrows drew together. His jaw clenched. I watched the color drain from his face as he scrolled, and scrolled, and scrolled, each swipe down revealing another layer of betrayal. His breathing got faster, shallower. When he finally looked up at Vanessa, there were tears in his eyes. But behind the tears, there was something else, something harder. "Vanessa," he said, and his voice was so quiet everyone leaned forward to hear. "Tell me this isn't real." "Daniel, baby, please." She took those out of context. "Chelsea and I were just venting. Everyone vents about their in-laws. You said you couldn't wait for my mother to die." The flatness in his voice was worse than anger. It was the sound of love dying. "You calculated her life expectancy." "I didn't mean it like that." "How else could you possibly mean it?" He kept scrolling, and with each new revelation, I watched him flinch like he'd been physically struck. "Once we're married, I can drop the act." He'll choose me over her. He always does. Vanessa. His voice broke. What is this? Who are you? She reached for him, but he stepped back. Daniel, please. I love you. Those messages, they were just me being stressed. Your mother has been difficult. Difficult? Daniel's voice rose. My mother has bent over backwards for you. She welcomed you into her home. She helped plan this wedding. She loved you. And you've been counting down the days until she dies? Vanessa's mask was slipping. I could see the panic in her eyes, but beneath it, that same annoyance I'd seen in the apartment, as if we were all being unreasonable. You're seriously going to take her side? Vanessa said. After everything we've planned? After everything I've done for you? What have you done for me? Daniel asked. According to these texts, you've been lying to me for our entire relationship, pretending to care about my mother, manipulating me into defending you against her. People were watching in stunned silence. Vanessa's mother stood up. Daniel, I think everyone's emotions are running high. Maybe we should discuss this privately. No, Daniel said firmly. I think everyone here should know exactly who I almost married. He looked at Vanessa, and there were tears in his eyes. Did you ever love me? Or was I just stability and a comfortable life like you told Chelsea? Vanessa's face hardened. Something shifted in her posture, in the set of her jaw. The mask didn't just slip, it shattered like glass, and what was underneath was cold and ugly. When she spoke, her voice had lost all its sweetness, all its practiced warmth. You know what? Fine. You want the truth? She looked around at the shocked faces. Your mother is provincial and boring. That quaint little house in Vermont, that simple little life, those endless stories about your childhood that no one wants to hear. I've been pretending to care for 2 years. 2 years of smiling through her mediocrity. And yes, I'm tired of it. Yes, I'll be relieved when she's gone, and I don't have to fake interest in her pathetic existence anymore. Someone gasped. I think it was one of the bridesmaids. Vanessa didn't even notice. She was on a roll now, all her venom pouring out. And yes, Daniel, I chose you because you're safe, because you're predictable and steady, and you'd give me a comfortable life. You're not exciting. You're not passionate, but you're reliable. And sometimes that's worth more than love. She said the word love like it disgusted her. Love is for people who can't afford to be practical. The words hung in the air like poison. Daniel looked at her as if seeing her for the first time. Maybe he was. Get out, he said quietly. What? Get out of this restaurant. The wedding is off. We're done. Vanessa's eyes went wide. You can't be serious. Daniel, we can work through this. Get out. His voice was louder now, carrying a note of finality. For a moment, I thought Vanessa might argue more, but something in Daniel's face must have told her it was over. She grabbed her purse, looked around the room at all the stunned faces, and then locked eyes with me. This is your fault, she hissed. You bitter old woman, you couldn't stand to see him happy. I stopped you from ruining my son's life, I said calmly. That's what mothers do. Vanessa stormed out, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. Her parents rushed after her, her mother throwing me a venomous glare. The room remained silent for a beat, then 2. Then Daniel turned to the gathered guests. I'm sorry, he said, his voice breaking. There's not going to be a wedding tomorrow. Thank you all for coming, and I'm sorry for wasting your time. He walked out of the restaurant, and I followed him. I found Daniel outside on a bench, head in his hands. I sat beside him and wrapped my arm around his shoulders. He leaned into me and cried like he hadn't cried since he was a child. I'm so sorry, Mom, for all the times I defended her, for making you feel like you were the problem. You couldn't have known. She was very convincing. I almost married someone who wanted you dead. But you didn't. You're here with me. That's what matters. We sat there as the September evening cooled around us. Daniel in my arms the way he used to be when the world felt too big and scary. Eventually, his tears slowed. He straightened up, wiping his face. The wedding's tomorrow. Everyone's here. I've lost thousands in deposits. Money comes back. You don't get your life back once you've wasted it on the wrong person. He hugged me tight. I don't know what I'd do without you. You'll never have to find out. 3 months later, Daniel moved back to Vermont. He's healing, taking his time, learning to trust again. We have dinner twice a week, and sometimes he still gets this sad look in his eyes, but it's getting better. As for Vanessa, last I heard, she's in New York dating a hedge fund manager. I hope she never tells him she can't wait for his mother to die. Me? I'm still here in my simple Vermont house, living my provincial life, and those 8 words that were supposed to be a countdown to my irrelevance became the truth that set my son free. I think about them sometimes. At least she'll be dead before our first anniversary. She was wrong. I'm not going anywhere.